Welcome back. This time we are in a restorative mode. So we've been to Rome. We've been to Greece first, then we went to Rome, then we went medieval, and then we did Reformation. We got shut down by the Puritans when last we were talking, and now we're back and we're in the Restoration period in England. This is 17th century, May 1660, and we see the return of the English monarchy. So, Charles III comes back over from his exile in France, and with him, he brings a whole load of new stuff. So, basically, the Puritans are becoming increasingly unpopular in England, probably because they kept bashing all the fun things like theatre and boozing and stuff. I'm just gonna say, they're like, if you want people on your side, don't take away what they love. Uh, and as well as some other political stuff that was happening, it basically allows for the crown supporters and the royalists to push for Charles II's return, and he comes back as a constitutional monarchy. Um, After having like agreed that he's going to sign some stuff, Parliament is kind of our modern Parliament is created as a result. And as he returns, he comes back with like a whole load of new pop culture basically from France. He's like bringing all the trends from Europe. So the first thing he, well, maybe not the first thing, he probably like puts his crown on, gets coronated, then goes like back to some palace, takes his crown off again, kicks his like fancy heels off, and then he's like, I want theatre back. So he lifts the ban on theatre. And he also starts to introduce a whole load of new theatre traditions. So Charles III, huge patron of the arts. And one of the biggest things that he does is uh, basically he brings over actresses. So for the first time, we have women on stage. We have women making a living out of being actresses and being respected for doing so. So we're back in like we're in an exciting new place for theatre. And also we're in a place where it's still very bawdy. Still a lot of comedy. And I also think this is a period of time where theatre becomes truly for everyone for the first time, and we'll go into a bit about that. But like first, before we do, I just want to talk about one of my favourite like one of my favourite female theatre figures is Aphra Behn. Um, so Aphra Behn is like one of the first women to really start. Like she's like one of the first like female theatre celebrities, and she becomes a household name for many people. She's a playwright. So along with women like being on stage, they're also now allowed to start telling stories. Allowed, they are able to take up some of their space. But Aphra Behn is fascinating, right? So Aphra Behn is so a former spy for starts. So she was a spy for Charles II and in Antwerp. And upon her return to London under Charles III, begins to write for the stage. And Virginia Woolf had a beautiful quote, which I am going to read out, which because I just think it's like just like a beautiful thing about like Aphra Behn's significance to like women in general, but particularly in the arts. And Virginia Woolf said this: all women together ought to let flowers fall upon the tomb of Aphra Behn, which is, most scandalously but rather appropriately, in Westminster Abbey. For it was she who earned them the right to speak their minds. So Aphra Behn comes to the stage. She's telling stories from a female perspective. She's telling stories about women, and women are the ones who are acting in her plays. But also, as well as like women, like plays around this time become real bawdy, real fun. Charles III is like known for his decadence and this like free love spirit that he brings back from France. So plays, they start to centre around the bedchamber. The bedchamber, for the first time, scandalous, appears on stage. No longer are we talking about heroes and kings and like the histories of Shakespeare. We're now talking about like sexy affairs. And having sexually explicit language on stage. It gets all very fun. um, and it becomes real commonplace in court as well as in city theatres. So everyone's laughing at the same jokes. And the king is like actively encouraging this the whole time, because he's like, I find this hilarious. So he's got like a real childish sense of humour, so everyone else has to as well. But plays are fully immoral at this point. There's they kind of no longer criticize drinking. People are gambling. They're like falling in love. They're falling in lust. And they even begin to like mock hypocrisies within morality for the first time. And you see like manners being mocked in these plays. And we start to see like some real like bursts of like satire, and wit appears in English theatre, I think. So you get, and in terms of like staging and technology for this period, it's absolutely insane, right? So everyone no one's had any theatre for 2 years. Can you imagine not watching any films for 2 years and suddenly people start making films again and you're like, oh my god. And it's not even that you can't like watch old ones, like you can't watch any. So people go big. Audience become like much more diverse as well. So, and theatres are built to reflect that. So let's start with the theatres, and then we can talk a bit about how that kind of shapes things. So like if you look at this theatre here, so for the first time we have like seating for different price seating, but all in the same theatre. So you have like, and you'll notice the boxes here, here and here, so like on the two sides of the stage, are actually facing the audience. So the rich people are coming to the theatre for the first time because they want to be seen, not just because they want to see what's on play. And if you ever sit like in a lot of theatres now, those boxes are now like places for equipment like speakers and stuff, because the view of the stage in those boxes is shit. Like the best view is down in the stalls or up in the circle, but that wasn't the point. People weren't coming to the theatre because they wanted to see, because they were coming to the theatre because it was fashionable. So theatre becomes this thing. The king likes theatre, so suddenly everyone wants to be seen to like theatre, and that even is reflected in the actual buildings themselves. And you also have like the cheap seats as well. So you have like the spaces at the back where anyone can buy a ticket. You have the stalls where you've got the kind of growing middle classes are sitting. So for the first time, people are of all different classes are coming into the same spaces and listening to the same stories and laughing at the same jokes. and we start to see political satire like starts to kind of have like a birth. We see like comedy, we see stories about, we're still seeing a lot of stories about like heroes and military heroes and things, but we're starting to get that kind of true unifying theatre, like theatre that really represents the humanity that is in the audience for the first time. And it's a really exciting time for theatre. And it's shifting away from this idea of like the courtly drama versus the like play for the peasants. We now have a play is for everyone. So writers are writing stories that reflect that as well. And it's no wonder, like, in that space, of course, comedy is the thing that is like becomes popular, right? Just makes sense. We also see the birth of the proscenium arch. So you saw in that picture, like you've got that kind of like elaborate bit around the stage, and everyone's facing that one kind of end stage. That's the proscenium arch. And it's basically like a frame, because at this time productions become huge. So you've had no theatre for 20 years. And suddenly everyone's allowed and encouraged and actively like encouraged to create theatre. So they're creating these beautiful spectacles, and the idea is to create theatre that looks like one of those epic oil paintings, right? And you also have the introduction of what's called machine plays. So machine plays are plays relying on new technology. So huge bits of scenery, big props. We start to see the backstage area of these purpose-built theatres start to become much bigger, so that they can accommodate scenery and they can accommodate like ships. Some of the plays had like There's one play I think that had like 40 animals on stage during this period, like 40 horses marched into battle on stage. There was another play that had like a full galleon, like a ship. An actual ship was wheeled on stage and then wheeled off again. Like people were going huge. You had also had like the introduction of rafters, so people flying down from up in the lights, flying down onto stage for the first time. Um, and it's or like that becomes more common at least. And it becomes very exciting. Like big stunts, big battle scenes. Everything's very elaborate. We're borrowing a lot of ideas at this time from French opera as well, so that's the kind of production quality that we're going with. And these become known as the English operas, this like set of the set of machine plays. And you know, we also need epic stories alongside those like big things. So we kind of we start to resurrect that history and cycles things. We start to go back and do a bit of neoclassicism and do a bit of like looking for heroes of myth and legend. And having plays like the Greek myth Psyche was like a real blockbuster. The Legends of King Arthur, like the chivalric plays as well. We start to see the introduction of Lancelot as a character as he comes back from France. We see people fighting dragons, monsters. It's the beginning. I think this is the period that defines blockbuster. Like this is your summer blockbuster, and this is also the beginning of the flop. Right? So before, a theatre troupe could just be a group of people, like a family of people who walked around the country making a living telling stories. Now productions cost a lot of money, and if they fail, the theatre companies go bankrupt. So we start to see theatre becoming big business for the first time. We see the entertainment industry being established during this restoration period. And they kind of remain the most popular type of this kind of big blockbuster vibe, remains the most popular form of theatre right up until the Victorian period. So and you see in the Victorian period there's a distinct shift which is led as kind of a direct response to the Industrial Revolution, because the Industrial Revolution causes a massive societal shift. So it's you know, we've got empire and we've got themes of that coming into our stories, and it's a massive shift away from fantastical spectacle into also story into people's parlours and into their living rooms, stories about every day. So we start to see in the Victorian period this move from big spectacular melodrama, and the melodrama still exists in the Victorian period at the beginning, but you start to see this shift into things like Oscar Wilde. Yeah, you know, the importance of being earnest. You see those more everyday slice of life vibes. You also start to see the rise of the kitchen sink drama. So for the first time, instead of being the comic relief, we have the working class and the middle class become the heroes. So it's not stories about kings anymore. Now it's stories about the people in the audience themselves. And yeah, that's quite exciting. But I'm conscious I was going to keep these these really short. So we're going to end the series there for now. So that's it, from ancient Greece all the way up to the 17th century. 17th and 18th century, to be fair. So I'm not sure if we'll keep going, but I hope that you've really enjoyed this as much as I have enjoyed it. I've spent a good, like, long afternoon. I spent a whole morning researching and then, like, a couple of hours just chilling and recording and chatting into a camera. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you do want to hear more, leave a comment. Like, I can do Victorian stuff. This is where it starts to get really bitty as well, because then we've also got, like, the vaudeville music hall of it all, and what happens post World War II, because there's like a huge shift in the way that stories are told, partly because of, you know, we have things like film and radio, but also partly because the like Europe's in existential crisis, right? So we've hit our troubled dark night of the soul at the end of World War II. And people start to grapple with that through theatre. So if you want to hear more, leave me a comment about what kind of, like, if there's a particular period that you'd like me to talk about. I can also do things outside of England. So I've also been looking recently into kabuki theatre in Asia. So yeah, so we can do like, yeah, just leave me a comment if you want to see more and I'll do more. But if not, I hope you've enjoyed what is there. If you want to have a go at your own community podcast, come along to Nerdy Up North Discord, link in the description below. And I can oh, pardon me. Yeah, I can come say hi to us and we can help you get set up and do your own podcast, because it's, if I can do it, I'm like the most technologically challenged person. If I can figure it out, we can definitely get you set up. Even if you think you can't, you absolutely can. Come and tell us about what you love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.